All right, let's make a coffee. I'm on pretty much the second smallest grind setting, so it only gets one fire, so it's not as strong as it can make it. I'm going to turn it on using a clear cup so you can see the end result. It's got a pretty quick heat up time. I wouldn't say it's the fastest of a Jura, and it heats up much faster. Maybe half the time, perhaps. But it's still pretty quick. You'll see it's just about done. So maybe 30, 45 seconds. It's rinsing. I actually set this feature up. The rinse feature is in the settings option. This runs hot water through the system to give you a hotter cup of coffee, because I found that the coffee coming out of this was actually not that hot. And so what you've got to do is you have to turn that setting on, and then you also have to turn in the settings. There's a heat setting as well that you can bump up. I don't have the filter installed because I'm using reverse osmosis water. So all right, let's make coffee. Let's just do a normal coffee, for example, because that's basically making an espresso but pulling it longer. I'm going to max out the beans. I know that goes to extra shots, so that'll actually do 2 separate shots. So I'm going to hit OK. And then you get to decide how much you want. So normal cup of coffee is probably closer to 220 milliliters. So I'm going to hit go. Reasonably quiet. It's not as quiet as they claim it is. It's not earth-shatteringly quiet when it grinds, but it's quiet enough. This is very fresh Ethiopian coffee. I roasted the coffee. Ethiopian coffee is known to have a lot of fines, so it's putting the maximum pressure against this puck of coffee that it's brewing through. You can see it's just zipping right out. So it can't really build any pressure, so you can't make a traditional espresso. If you look at the color as well too, it's pretty darn light. So it makes a good enough coffee, kind of, but you know, it's a step above an espresso, but this is not anywhere close to a traditional cup of pour over coffee. Even a cup of coffee from a drip machine like a Mocha Master, in my opinion, is going to taste a lot better than this. It has tasted better than this. Even like, you know, my Jura machine, the coffee coming out of that is considerably better. It's much thicker, creamier, way more flavor and taste. The coffee that it makes is darker, so it's able to extract the bean more. I think the issue with this is actually the grinder. It just can't grind fine enough to really get a tight enough puck to really extract as much as you want from it. So that's it in a nutshell. The settings are pretty easy to use. I don't like how it fogs up the screen every time you use it. So the heat from up here, it fogs up the screen pretty badly every time you use it. I'm going to move this coffee so that it stops and the steam will start to dissipate. The settings are super easy to use. You can just go back up and down and you know, let's say you know, cup lights, startup rinsing. So that was the one earlier where I mentioned, you know, rinsing hot water at startup boosts the temperature of the first coffee, and all you'd have to do is hit OK or up and down to change that one. Super easy. Temperature, that's the other mention. You know, I set the temperature to high to extract more from the bean and keep the coffee hotter. But yeah, going through here and changing the different settings is actually super easy. So it's a very intuitive unit. The buttons up here kind of look impressive. They don't change. They're just, you know, an image with a backlight behind it, and you can actually change how bright the backlight is. You can change how bright the backlight is for this. There's profile, so I'm on yellow profile. You can do up to 4. I only set 2, but I like how this button color changes based on the profile as well. So that's a guest profile, but you can do 4 different colors. There's green and red profiles as well. There's more drinks in here, and you can choose, hot or iced. And so you get a pretty good mix of different little drinks you can do. But honestly, I think most people are not really going to use these. They're probably just going to use the buttons on the front, which is great. I've not made any iced coffee drinks yet. That just doesn't typically appeal to me. But you can basically see on this coffee, it's all right. It's a solid. I'd put it as a C. I am a coffee geek. I do have a pretty sizable setup, and this is really for my wife. I've got a really big commercial machine with very large grinders. My grinders are actually bigger than this whole Super Auto. So I'm a bit of a snob. So for you, this might actually be a great cup of coffee, and it's maybe as good as what you'd get at your local cafe. Because a lot of local cafes don't really make that great of coffee. The milk drinks, for me, were not even worth messing with. I don't drink traditional milk. I just drink alternate milks like oat milk and almond milk. But I find this little LatteGo system, it really sucks for that. Maybe it's okay for normal milks, but basically what it does is it pulls some milk in from that little red area. It brings it up into that circular area, and it spins it around in that little channel based on steam pressure, and then it burps it out the front here, which then drops into your cup. The problem is with a normal size cup, this is the issue. It's actually going to drop that from a pretty good distance, and it's going to create a fair amount of splattering in your drink, and so you're going to get splatters of both coffee and milk remnants all over the place when you use it. It's not horrible. If you've got a taller cup, this thing will move up and down, and so you could put a taller mug in here, and that would certainly minimize the issue substantially. Actually, this cup's even too tall for this unit, but I think you get the picture. If you had the right size cup, you could get yourself in a better situation and really minimize any kind of drips or drops or anything like that here. So yeah, there's that. Cleaning is pretty easy. This piece feels very cheap. It's not very well made. It's very, very thin, and you do have to pull that out quite a bit to empty out the drip tray. So just in the process of making coffees, when it does the cleaning cycle, it drops water down here. And so this was freshly cleaned yesterday, and so I've just done this one coffee on it, and you can see how much water it drops down here. So you are going to have to interact with this probably at least once a week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And so interacting with this scenario, and this, I don't know if you can see, but the finishing on that is not that great. So, these edges are a little sharp and not that pleasant feeling. But interacting with this, it kind of, feels like a piece of junk. The plastic is very cheap and thin. There's this little piece up here. The coffee pucks that it drops down, that's as formed as they can get, basically, because that's the tightest grind setting with the hottest temperature. And it has this little piece here which cuts them in half as they drop down, which, they probably did it for a reason so they didn't pile up and you could fit more in there. But the problem with that is it generates more surface area, and that creates more mold. So if you leave this for a couple of days, it only takes maybe a day and a half, 2 days, you'll actually see a lot of mold generate in this area, and then you've got to clean this out. It is dishwasher safe, which is nice, so that's something, and it's worth considering. Hold on, put this back away. So yeah, that's interacting with this on a regular basis isn't what I would call wonderful, but it's dishwasher safe, it's functional, and it looks pretty good from a little bit of a distance. Now, another thing I'd like to complain about a little bit is interacting with this is actually great because you can just slide it completely straight out, so you can put it under a shelf or what have you, and you get easy access to the water. However, this little area, I actually had the former version of this Super Auto, the 3300 series, which had the LatteGo system, this thing as well with it. So I do have a lot of experience with this system. And we had that for about 3 years. It did fail after about 3 years. The lifespan of this general system, I would guess, is somewhere in that region. There was only 2 of us drinking from it, and we were not heavy users of it. We never put really oily beans in it either, which is much harder on these machines. They were only home roasted beans, and I roast them up to at most medium. So relatively lightweight there. However, what you do have to do and what you should be aware of is look at the manual. Once a week, they actually want you to pull this thing out. And you'll see here, it does generate a fair amount of coffee bits, and this part up here will get kind of dirty. They do want you to clean this thing off with water every week or so, which is not a huge deal. It's not a big pain in the butt. But there are actually areas in here, and I can't really do it while holding my phone, but here you'd actually use your fingers and pull this down, and you can actually kind of, you don't take it apart, but you can kind of move this whole system around, and you can lubricate some of the parts on this, and you're actually supposed to do that with the silicone grease that they sell. You're supposed to do that from time to time. I want to say maybe once a month. We didn't really do it that frequently, but I did probably do it every 2 or 3 months because I'm generally pretty good on maintenance. I don't think most people are buying this or taking this out and servicing this every single week and then lubricating every single month. But I would check the owner's manual on that and double check too, because you are going to run into issues if you don't do any service. And then when you do actually have to come in here and it's gucky and, you know, in really bad shape, it's very unpleasant to have to deal with. So, in summation, I would give this unit probably a solid C. If you just want something basic that'll give you decent enough coffee drinks and you don't want to put any effort into it, it's a perfectly fine product. And, you know, you should budget. It's going to probably last you about 3 years, give or take, if you're using it with a reasonable frequency and there's only a couple people using it. Something like this Jura unit, this is more expensive. I think it was $1,700 or $1,800 or $2,000, something like that. And it only does coffee, doesn't do any milk drinks, but the quality of the drinks is significantly higher. The parts and the pieces on here are way, way better built. That's a big piece of metal. The quality of it is much higher. It heats up faster. It's just a much, much better unit. But this is much larger, much more expensive. Yeah, and so there's always a trade-off, right? But I would definitely say, at least for us, the trade-off in terms of the quality of coffee and the fiddly bits, this actually, the maintenance on this is effectively zero. You just kind of drop a tablet in it when it tells you to do it, which is maybe every 4 to 6 months. You hit the cleaning cycle, and that is it. You never have to open up the internals. You never have to fiddle around with this. You can see dust on the top of this thing because basically we never really have to pull it out or do anything with it. We've had this one for maybe 3 years, give or take, or maybe 2 or 3 years, and it's been absolutely zero trouble. And if you can swing it, I would actually personally recommend spending the extra money on something like this, because in the long run, you're actually going to save money. Because I do think that this one, I'd be shocked if it lasts more than 3 to 5 years. This Jura WE6, a lot of folks have put these in large offices with 20 or 30 people using it daily, multiple times a day, and they've had 5 or 6 trouble-free years with it. So if you look up some of the reviews on something like this, it's really a serious workhorse. And so if it'll last that long in a large office, for 2 people, you can at least assume it's probably going to last at least twice that. So if you can get 10, 12, 14 years out of something like this, and only 3 years, or maybe 4 or 5 out of something like this, if this is 25, 30% more money, it's a good ROI when it's all said and done. So my 2 cents would be, if space is a concern and you really like this unit, you really like how it looks, and that's important to you, and you like the profiles and some of the unique features that this has, and you really want to do different drinks, I would say, especially milk drinks, I would say, yeah, I wouldn't say don't buy this, but I would say buy this and assume it's going to last 3 to 5 years at most, and have a backup plan when it does eventually fail, and know that there is some maintenance involved in it that's not inconsequential. It's not a big deal, but it's not just set and forget like the Jura is. So it's a solid C, I would give it, and it's a good enough unit. But me personally, I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of it, and I'm not going to be drinking coffee out of it. This would be something that my wife would take to her office or something along those lines as kind of a backup.